Hi, Randy Christensen here. A couple of the things that we're running into, this is such a good corner, and I can't disagree with the possibility of some additional commercial space. But what we're running into is that, users are looking for less and less space, and if we add more commercial, that means we're going to have to add more parking for that commercial use. The other small comment I've got is, if there's some flexibility, and I certainly understand, Winona's drive for their parking requirements, but if there's some flexibility with that, maybe there's a compromise with, the density, something that we're running into with construction costs. I mean, if we can compact and build up, it's not as impactful from a construction standpoint with costs that are starting to creep up on us. So I guess there's all that. I mean, we're certainly, that's why we're here. We want to hear your feedback and so forth. That's just some initial thoughts I have on the additional commercial space. That if there's some small compromise, that I guess that we'd have to go back as a team and talk about that. But leasing it out, we are experiencing with some other projects that we got, even one right on Park Street in Madison. We got 2,500 square feet, and it's right on a hard corner, and it's sitting vacant. It's a brand new building, sitting vacant for a little over a year. So just food for thought.
Okay, I get all that. Of course, coming from my perspective, this is a retail business corner, and we're looking at downzoning it to CDD so we can put a bunch of residential. I'd like to at least maintain a reasonable amount of commercial space, and I think the way it's being proposed with only 40 foot of depth really limits who's going to go in there. And obviously in this project you have an ideal tenant sitting in the room with us right now, but we can't build it. When we look at a property, we can't build it thinking he's going to be there for the next 50 years. That's probably not reasonable. So I think we need to look at commercial space for what is the easiest thing to lease out. And as you said, this is a prime corner. We'll hear whatever else says. I stick by, I think we need more commercial, and that's not a lot for a footprint like this to have, and whatever the calculation comes out to, 3,800 square feet, something like that. And it would require more parking, yes, and as far as the density, I agree with Susan, it's too dense. So I mean, part of what I want to talk about is, again, how I feel this could possibly work, and that's taking out a lot of that fourth floor. I just don't see how we can surround that apartment building with 2 stories above it. I don't see how we can take that single-family home that right now is next to a single-family home, that's zoned single-family. I don't believe that. I dug right, that's zoned single-family, that's not commercial. And then say we're going to put 5 stories, because it's 5 stories right there, correct? Mm-hmm. 2 stories of parking, 3, and put 5 stories next to a single-family home. That's a lot. I don't know how to fix that one, but certainly by building step backs around that and around the apartment building around Monona Drive, to me, would go a long ways. Parking. A question, it probably doesn't matter right now, we're talking concept, but on your initial site plan, you show a property line, and inside that property line, there's a line that goes all the way around the building. I don't understand what that is. It's outside the building, but it's a dashed line that surrounds it. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Mark, can you speak on that?
I don't know.
Are you talking about, we have the heavy dark line, which is the property line, and we have another line inside of that that represents our setback? If that's the line you're talking about or not.
That's not a setback line, but that may be your dream setback. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I get you, because that line looks like it's about the same width as that sidewalk on Monona Drive, which is 5 feet, and that's not a setback line. Okay, but that was your intention, though, to show what 5 foot is like around there, or whatever?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, it was a starting point for our designer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I understand what you're saying.
And again, I think that's an issue, and I'm not sure how to reconcile that issue. I'm sitting here telling you, I mean, it's easy to pull the building away from Monona Drive a little bit. I'm telling you, you're awful close to everybody, and I look at your plans, and you need that, whatever you've got, 65 feet or whatever width to have a building that you can park in underneath. So that's one that's hard to reconcile, which is where I go back to, if you're going to be whatever that is, 7, 8 feet, 10 feet, I don't think it's 10 feet. I've been trying to make something work with the scale. If it does, if I can make it work off Monona Drive, it looks, I think he was close, 7, 8 feet, something like that. But if you're going to do that, I think you have to find a way to work with your neighbor. I don't know how you could build it without working with them. You scaffold it. You have no way to end load it. You can't end load it off Monona Drive. Another way is his building or parking lot, or looks like the driveway in between. So that's an issue. And I don't know how to reconcile that without telling you need to work with your neighbor, because I surely wouldn't pull it any closer to the single-family housing. And I wouldn't pull it any closer to Nichols Road. And I guess saying all that, this is building A. What's building B? Anybody? Is that his?
I just think
Gunderson's building?
it's just a placeholder name of it, Chris.
Okay, I just thought maybe you talked to him about that being building B or something.
No.
Okay. All right. Again, this is random, but I'm just going to go through it. Unsolicited, you talked about your community room. If we get to that point, if I were renting there, I'd rather sit in there and have views of the golf course and views of the apartments behind me, the rows of the apartments behind me, but that's just one comment. I agree with the comment of the speaker that there just is no extra parking available in the neighborhood. I know you want us to relent on parking, but our experience has killed us a couple times, and there is nowhere, if this isn't right, to get other parking from. I mentioned that we're getting rid of, with this, we get rid of 2 bad curb cuts. Cut back the 4th floor, 7, 8. 4 stories towards the residential is intimidating. I agree with staff's comment that if this were to go ahead, it would require some incredible architecture and landscaping around Nichols, Monona Drive, and landscaping towards the neighbors, because we surely wouldn't want it to look just like a parking ramp on that first or second level of parking where you see it from the street. I think we'd all be in agreement with that. Fire access, we'd have to talk to fire. Where's the fire access for this building? I mean, I don't know how they'd serve it. So I think that's a question I'd have. There's no fire lanes. There's just no room for them, and that would be a big question. I mentioned Upper Drive too close to the drive, where I agree with staff, but I think with a little rework, it could be pulled off. You could make something that would be the compromise. Needs more parking. And again, I just go to the stories, so I won't belabor it. To me, again, the density is an issue. And instead of me being totally negative, it doesn't work, I was just trying to come up with some suggestions where maybe something could work on this site. But
I appreciate that, Chris.
It would take some work for me.
Corrine?
I agree with the density comments. So I guess if I could step back just a second, and we have had, we've had a lot of discussions with different groups over the time that I've been on the commission, and there has been consistency in some of the discussion items that we've had, and so I guess I just want to share some of those thoughts with you for your consideration as you're, going back and taking a look at this again. This corner, and we talk about the location of where a site is and the importance of that site for the city. And I think if you look at this corner, right, like Chris said, it's a great corner, but it is pretty much the entry to our community center, which is down this road. So thinking about what you could do to make this special in some way, just a 5-story building is not necessarily special. We've had some different conversations about diversity of housing type, and I don't know what you're able to do or not able to do, but when you look at our strategic housing plan for the city, we do have a goal to try to think about redevelopment and providing diversity of housing in the city. And we have had some different options that we've approved over the last few years as well. One of them, I guess, it's not totally approved yet, but we've talked about how to mass, as you're going from a single family up to the more diverse use, having some more of a maybe a separate building. I know there's not space on the site, so I don't know how you could do it, but just going, like Chris was saying, from the single family for one-story house up to this big apartment building, there's no in between. So thinking about how to step that back. We've also just, asked for the parking. And I guess one of the questions I had is, you show that there's this patio area, and that implies to me some kind of a use that would require a patio, but then you only have the 9 spaces. So, I'm not sure if that would be enough, if it was a commercial use that would want to use a patio to have 9 spaces. And then there's a consideration of where would the overflow be. If somebody wants to have some guests over, there's really nowhere for them. If they need a fob to get into the parking lot, there's nowhere for them to go. Only 9 apartments can have 1 guest over at a time. So those are some of the considerations, is how would that even work? So I won't go too much more into it, because I think it's too big, and I do think there's concerns about how it's currently laid out. But if you could, come up with some creative strategy to think differently about this site and what kind of housing that might give you some different approaches.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, Cory?
I guess one more thing too, back to the comment that Chris made about the retail business and the commercial uses. Yeah, and don't forget that part too. So.
Okay. We'll take it in consideration for sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Brandon.
So, I think that this corner is a very, very interesting creative challenge with the terrain and with the size of the parcels laid out. I can see a lot of potential to the project, but I do think that it comes with maybe some maybe fundamental things to go back to the drawing board about. The elevation of that ground floor parking lot, I think if you guys considered an alternate elevation for that lowest level parking, to possibly make it more of an underground parking, I think maybe it might unleash a lot of other creative opportunities with massing, setbacks, how different units are laid out, et cetera, if just the elevation of that lowest level parking garage. I know that there's going to be cost that's associated with that, but I think that it makes a lot of things possible. Things in terms of where they're talking about the parking entrance, where and how much commercial space is available, massing on the west end of the building. I think that even for as small as the lot is and even the shape of the building is in, I think if you were able to just, you start at a different elevation, I could see a very beautiful building going here. So, yeah, and a lot of the other technical things that people have brought up, I agree with all of those points. But just with the terrain that's available, the slope that's available, I got to think that there's a very creative solution. So.
Rob.
Thank you. Generally, the density is too large in my mind. The open space doesn't look like it's going to be there. I have issues with the location of the drive in respect to Monona Drive, and as stated by staff. I agree with that. The biggest problem, well, so there's a number of problems. I think the density is one of the biggest things. It's just, it's too much on this site. I tried to envision this building, especially from the west elevation. And that's going to be a massive wall, because you're coming up Nichols heading east, and you're starting low, and as you look up, you're going to see these two little houses, and you're going to see a wall of building. And the site plan, it's basically offset the property lines and went up 4 stories to maximize, and it's going to be this shadow-producing mass on the corner. Now, I like the idea of redevelopment of some kind right here. I didn't do the work like Chris to try to think of creative solutions, because I don't know how to reconcile that. But it's just too big in my mind. It's the only building that comes up to the corner. It takes over that corner, and not in a complementary way, I don't think. I think it's just a big wall on several sides. And that's not even looking at the property to the north and what that would become. So I think there's a lot of work to do. I agree with a lot of the comments that were made. I don't need to rehash those, I don't think, but it's just too big, too dense for the site. And yeah, I think to that western property owner, that's one thing, but they're kind of on an edge area, and there's the possibility of redevelopment, and that might look something, but man, I think that's going to impact the next 3 properties. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll kind of summarize the one comment that I've heard throughout, and I know we've talked about before, and that's kind of that 3-legged stool method of, like, you got issues with some green space, landscaping issues, tied to density, tied to parking. And the 3 of those all interplay with one another, and I think you've heard it tonight pretty clear of, like, those 3 pieces play in tandem together, and kind of how you problem solve those pieces will help out. Do you know approximately what the amount of commercial space that is at the current building right now?
Square footage.
Square footage wise.
7,500, I'm guessing, maybe 8,500, 8,100.
And
That's on both floors.
Actually, 3.
3, okay.
We actually
that basement on the backside.
as well.
And so it comes up to the piece regarding, we understand the current market and hearing feedback of, like, it's been difficult to lease out commercial space, and it's important for us to maintain commercial presence in a lot of our spaces. And so looking at taking something that's roughly bringing it down into a third would be a pretty significant compared to closer to that 3,800, which would be closer to that half range. One strategy that we see, we had another developer bring forward when they were looking at the height of their building and the impact on their neighbors, was around a shadowing impact study of looking at, as the days and the seasons, what is the impact based on what it is that you're trying to put together here? What is the impact on some of the neighboring properties? And I think it will give you a better sense of how this building is going to be relating to some of these other properties and some of the concerns that I think you've heard tonight, but I think it gives another look at some of the adjustments that you might make, and then how does that relieve some of those concerns to your neighboring properties. It might make it more of a feasible project. Any questions from you guys as a team on any items that you heard tonight that you need clarification on?
I don't think so. I think I was trying to take pretty good notes. I'm sure Mark was doing the same. But certainly appreciate all the feedback that you all provided. I guess, that's certainly why we're here tonight. We wanted to get that feedback from you folks. And we will go back as a team and evaluate and kind of look forward to the next time we can come back and show you something that we've worked on. So, but again, thank you so much for your comments and so forth tonight. Certainly appreciate it. Mark, you have anything you would like to say?
No.
Okay.
You said it all. Yeah, a lot of good notes, a lot of good feedback.
Thank you.
We'll go back and re-noodle on it all.
All right.
You bet.
Chris?
And, go ahead.
This is just a small detail, but I want to piggyback on what Corrine said.
Yep.
Part of our parking ratios are including visitors to these buildings, and if you key fob everything off, there's nowhere for the visitors to go. Previous projects like this that we've had, what comes to mind might be the Current or the Metcalf project. They both had 2 levels of parking, and the 1 level of parking, for example, where your commercial is, that door would go way further down for it to be key fob so that there's room for visitors, overflow for commercial, visitors coming to the unit and such, and then maybe that lower level is just a key fob there so that the residents have their permanent spot that they know they're going to. But that's one of the ratio things we have is for those visitors. And with no street parking per se, they need some way to be able to use some of that. So it's something, a solution that other people have used when they've had 2 levels of parking.
Sure. Appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.
All right. I will close the item. I've scratched off my paper too much, so I think it was 6F. And we will move on to item 7A, which is staff reports regarding status of the developmental project and proposals, and I'll let staff pick which order of 1 through 5.
Thank you. As way of economic development update, just to let the commission know, some discussions have been taking place with the Slindies about their project over on Owen Road. In terms of next steps, possible options, opportunities for the project. So just wanted to let you know that those talks continue. I'm hoping there may be a opportunity for that to come back to the Plan Commission for some discussion, possibly what may work, what could work for the project, having been to CDA and sort of heard some of their feedback as well. So that is still sort of in discussion, and we're encouraging them to come back to the Commission as and when they're ready to do so. As far as potential upcoming Plan Commission items, couple smaller zoning permits expected for the next meeting, including possibly the first EV charging retrofit that we may be seeing over at Pier 37. Need to pin down a couple things there, but sort of more of a dedicated build out in one of the further afield parking options, within that complex. So just kind of the design, the signage, the how all those things would work, with the infrastructure that would be needed there as well as most likely a couple signage permits as well that will come through. As far as timing, continue to meet with the Bloom, the folks that are redeveloping on Monona Drive further north from where we just discussed. They, I believe, need to double check with the city attorney, but I believe he's comfortable with control at this point now. So they would start coming through. They have their CSM for Public Works Committee next week, October 5th or 6th. And they'll be looking to sort of tee up a couple of those considerations, rezoning, CSM, some of those pieces to get things, moving there as well. So plenty still moving forward. No specific updates from myself on either DEI or sustainability, but expecting both of those meetings in October.
All right. Do we know, will Chair Moore be back for those two?
I expect so, yes.
Okay. Not saying that I'm going anywhere. Just
Who?
And
Nancy.
Oh, to your point. Okay.
There was a joke in there about
No.
like we'd forgotten who.
No. I just like to mark down if you're counting on me. So.
yes, thank you.
We are always counting on you.
I did have a couple items, and not to steal Corrine's thunder here, but a couple things that she had shared, just that may be of interest, and I'll be following up with an email to the Commission after this meeting. the Greater Madison MPO, as well as in partnership with the Center for Land Use Education, has a two-part series for plan commissioners, kind of a training. I think it's 2 one-hour webinar trainings that will be taking place October 20th and October 27th. They appear to be free to register, and so I'll be sharing that link with you all. I did it a couple years ago. City staff, elected officials were all encouraged to join. Really good discussion, and certainly would encourage you. It's middle of the day. I think it's a Wednesday that those take place. So if you can, get some time in the day to do that, I'd certainly encourage it. And additionally, an article that came out in the New York Times this weekend that you may have seen about starter homes as well. It was more of a sort of longer piece, and I'll let Corinne talk to that a little bit more if she would like. But I'll share that link as well. So a couple items that I'll follow up with to the group after. Thanks.
Should I go?
Go for it.
Okay. The webinar series, it's over lunch, so it's 12 to 1. So hopefully, I signed up for it. It was pretty simple. And as far as the article, yeah, it was just a lot of what we've been discussing. I thought it was really interesting, and there's a lot of links out of the article as well that are something that I haven't had a chance to look into too much, but I've clicked on a few of them, and it just takes you to more information about some other strategies that are happening around the country in terms of getting some diversity in housing types. So yeah, Doug will share that, and if you don't know if people don't have a New York Times subscription, though, they might not be able to see it, so I don't know if there's a way to download that text, but
I think you get a certain.
and then I guess my only other question was about the strategic housing plan. As I was looking through that again, it gets back to the conversation we had last meeting, where it would be really great to have the updated census information, because you look at that and it's from 2007, and I think about when I moved to Monona in 2005, and it describes very well my experience as a new resident, which seems very different from my experience now, this many years later. So I know we talked about timeline for a comprehensive plan, and I don't know if the strategic housing plan is something that could be done in combination with a comprehensive plan, just because then that would not cost more money, but I think it might be something that we want to look at.
And I see that we have the mayor on the line as well. Is that something, I know we've had discussions, is that something you would like to jump in on now?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Yeah, we put you on the spot.
Yes, I put you on the
I'm
spot.
sorry. I'm listening, but I'm also looking through some other things. Yes, we have talked about that, and I know I try to sit in on most of your meetings, and I know that this has been a concern. I know you've asked Doug to put together some numbers. First of all, I'd just like to say that Doug is absolutely swamped these days, and something like this is just, he literally just does not have time for it right now. I know we're getting him extra help, but as I'm sure you all realize, when someone new comes on board, it also takes some time to get them up to speed on what's going on. So, but I think what we'd like to do is have a request come from the Plan Commission for the city to do a revised housing plan, and then we will put it in the budget. We're going to be considering having a first review of the capital budget this Thursday with the council, and making the final decisions in October. So if a request would come to from Plan Commission for a new housing study, we could get that in the plan, because it's something it's more than a matter of just coming up with some numbers of how many apartments and condos we have and that type of thing, and we would be hiring a consultant to do that. So I guess that's what I would like to see, and I think that's what our interim administrator would also like to see.
I would make that request.
Doug, did you say that you were going to have something about this when we talked about this on the agenda for your next meeting possibly, or?
Yes, in terms
I
of...
think we can't have the request come now because it's not part of the agenda.
Yeah,
Oh, that's true.
I'd be happy to put it on for sort of a larger discussion, and maybe it even begins to flesh out some of the scope. I could share the link to the 2007 housing plan, and we could begin to maybe discuss some of those things, at least what the commission would like to see, as sort of a bigger picture discussion. I'm not sure how many of the details we can refine, but certainly start there, sort of cast the net wide, and then begin to hone it in a little bit as well. But certainly would be happy to put it on the October 10th meeting. I think there's a little bit more breathing room than maybe this meeting had anyway for the agenda as well. So I think that would be a good time with both alders back as well, to have that discussion.
All right. Are there other requests, Chris?
Well, yeah, I'd like to just comment on that. I think a housing study would be awesome, but we're making decisions weekly on big items. I mean, these land use changes are for 50, 60, 70 years. Even if interim, we could get that information we want, and maybe it is a consultant pulling it up, but if we just had the information, do we know how many rental units do we have? How many workforce type homes do we have? Some basic information that somebody could probably look at through censuses and stuff. And I get it that Doug doesn't have time. Totally get that. But there's some basic information. If we could get that right away, I mean, every month we have new people coming wanting to build this or that. And we say, well, we need diversity. We need diversity. Well, what do we have? I don't know. I don't know what our counts are. I have a good idea. So when you gave us, you probably remember, Brian, so when you gave us some numbers, whatever that was, 6-8 years ago, and then Eliza gave us numbers that were totally different. Who's right? I don't know.
They're using
So
different
what I'm
data
saying
sets.
is we don't have basic information to go on to make just some of these, because if we did have that, and then maybe at that point we say, okay, we're going to time out, we're not going to approve any more whatever unit is we think we're going over on until we have this housing study. But it'd give us some information, because the housing study is going to take months to do it properly. And a new strategic housing plan, that's really got to go with the comp plan, and that's years. I mean, last one we had, it took us, what, 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah. So I mean, we need that stuff, but we need something quick. And perhaps when we discuss this next week, our request to the mayor for the budget could be this small interim thing and then get a larger study to help us. But at least with this small thing, we can know if we're on the right track or if we're all messed up or what are we doing. How many units have we added? I don't know. A lot.
If I could just speak to that for a minute.
Please.
I do think that it would be helpful if you could provide a list of what you're looking for, but I would also say that any decisions about what kind of housing we're going to have in Monona is really the purview of the city council. I don't think it's necessarily Plan Commission's role to make a big decision like we're not going to have any more apartments in Monona for 2 years or something. We have to consider these projects when they're brought forward to us, or we could be sued if we don't do that. So, it's all part of a bigger discussion, I think, but I think it would be helpful if we could have a list of just what type of information you're looking for that possibly we'd have to explore a little bit if we could get just that as an interim feature, interim information for you to use.
And I fear if we talk too much more about this, it will start to become a discussion rather than asking for future information. So I think, Doug, you have enough to kind of give us that next step of like, where do we go from here? And then we can make sure that it's noticed and we can have a much more rich discussion next meeting.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right. Any other requests for information? Chris?
Questions just on some of the things Doug mentioned. That EV charging station, is that an independent contractor coming in to do that? Is that part of the Pier 37 ownership?
Independent contractor, I believe, associated with the grocery store, Metro Market, and sort of in there, probably closer towards the Jimmy John's noodles section,
Sure.
So further away from the main building. Yeah.
Well, it would make some sense to have be somebody there that wants to put it in to attract customers, because
Exactly.
somebody's not going to drive there to discharge. Slindy project, that is going ahead then, or at least they're talking about it?
We remain in discussion,
Okay,
certainly.
and I know we can't discuss other things, but well, it'll never be an agenda item, so one thing I would
There
look
might
at-
be. It depends on your request right now.
Well, my request would be, he put in a commercial project years ago up on Monona Drive. It is struggling, probably still, to rent that second floor commercial and retail. And it would be appropriate for somebody from the city to tell them that there could be consideration for a change of use on that second floor. We're looking at it everywhere else, and when you mentioned him, I thought about that. And I know he's always struggled, so we can't discuss it, but we can't ever say anything if we don't discuss it.
So a request from staff would be a consideration regarding
Well,
sites that already exist.
yeah, is it reasonable to say some of these, if they, I mean, you can drive by there and see the for rent signs in the windows.
And that, just to clarify, that's the Slindy project on the Anytime Fitness.
Yeah, that building.
Yep.
Yep.
And so it's providing information for developments that are already existing. for
Right.
Change of use.
Why always worry about the new guy? Let's take care of the people that have invested in our community. And then the Bloom, so it sounds like they're on board then too. You said they're coming back for CSMs, et cetera, so
Yes.
we're good with them then?
Yes, I believe so. I want to just double check just to make sure everything is in order for the site control documents have been shared. Attorneys are talking with one another, so I just want to double check that. But we have the Public Works Committee reviewing the CSM, and there'll be kind of a stepped process, but as there was with the pre-hearings, I'm going to try and tee up a few of these at least for noticing purposes. And I think a lot of them, the requests somewhat run together anyway, rezoning, CSMs, things like that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, so it kind of sounds like then they've gotten through CDA.
they, some numbers were shared with them. There's additional back and forth with terms and, schedules, things like that. But CDA got to a point where they were willing to at least share a first offer. So.
Great, thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, seeing none. Rob, your favorite item?
I would like to move adjournment.
All right, is there a second?
I will second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we are adjourned.